Welcome to the Pansa Pansa Forum. In the Yoruba language, the word pansa is usually injected into poetry to express an uncomfortable, uncensored, and inconvenient truth. The Pansa Pansa Forum is candid conversations about the life of African immigrants in America as it relates to their adaptation to their new home. While some may find it easy to integrate and can balance between retaining the original African culture while accepting the culture of their new home, many continue to struggle to find a balance between both worlds.
Hello and welcome to Pansa Pansa Live. This is a podcast where we discuss the lives of African immigrants and their assimilation into Western society as they raise younger generations in a country that is quite different from their own. We also explore the experiences of children of immigrants as they balance the African and Western cultures. We present to you this informative, interesting, and expansive dialogue about the intricate experiences of African immigrants in America.
Welcome to another episode of Pansa Pansa Podcast, the platform where we engage in deep conversation about the experiences, challenges, and resilience of African immigrants navigating life in the diaspora. I'm your host again, Kemi Seriki. Today, we're having much needed conversation about African fatherhood, culture, faith, and what it means to build a healthy family, especially for those of us raising children outside the continent. Our guest today is Dr. Israel Bamidele Olaore. He's a popularly known as Loving Naija Dad on TikTok, where he speaks directly to African immigrant fathers about parenting, emotionally present, discipline, humility, and what he calls family excellence. He is a father of 4 sons who are now grown men, and through his pastoral work is also a figure father to many adoptive daughters. He serves as president of Savaye LLC, Savaye Academy for Family Life Education, executive director of SAFE, and co-founder of Kindness International. He's currently work at healthcare chaplain in Northern California. He is passionate about mentoring others towards wholeness with compassionate and non-judgmental approach. What I really appreciate about his work is his approach towards speaking to African fathers without shaming them while offering support. He does not overlook or excuse harmful patterns among fathers. Today, we are going to explore how culture, religion, migration shape how African men shows up or the struggle to show up in their families. So, Dr. Israel Bamidele Olaore, I really thank you for joining me today on this important and well-needed conversation.
Thank you very much, Sister Kemi Seriki, for having us, having me to be on this podcast. Thank you so much.
So I just want to start, before we discuss fatherhood and family excellence, it's very important to understand where our belief system comes from. Can you talk about your childhood growing up both in Ghana, which I understand you were born in Ghana, and in Nigeria? What was family like for you as a child?
I grew up in Ghana where my father worked for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He was a printer in the regional press. So he went to Ghana in 1953 as a young man and married my mom in 1959. And I was born there in 1961. So we were in Ghana till 1971 when he was asked to come back to Nigeria to manage a book center in Maryland, in the Maryland area of Ikeja. So he was there at the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church for many years until he retired in 1998, I believe. But our spiritual life, my father grew up in the Anglican church, but his father died when he was very young. So his aunt cousin aunt adopted him and his three brothers, and his aunt, who is actually a cousin but is old enough to be his mother. So it's like a mother figure in his life was a Seventh-day Adventist. So my dad adopted that lifestyle where, as Seventh-day Adventists, we are very conscious about our health. I would say most Adventists shun alcohol, they shun certain meats. They are very conscious, and many are vegetarian. One of the things my dad tells me about his upbringing that caught me off guard when he was 95, about 95. He was visiting us after my mom passed away, and he said he's happy that his aunt raised him and not his dad. I said, why do you say that? He said, my dad was a drinker. He will drink, he works, but when he's back from work, he will go and order a keg of palm wine and gather his friends, and they will be singing and drinking. And he, as a young child, did not find that funny. I don't know what he saw, but he saw that drinking pattern. He said, if I had followed the path of my dad, I would not be 95. Now he's going to be 98 in 2 months, and he's still very healthy. So that upbringing from a very strict spiritual environment where he learned some discipline and life lessons that shaped him was passed on to us. I have a brother and three sisters, and I'm grateful that all of us are, stable in our different places. So that's a nutshell of my upbringing, being raised in a Christian environment.
That's very powerful, that at that age, young age, he was able to see from his father what is being normalized in the society that nobody ever talked about. Because drinking, as long as you're not falling inside gutter, might be functioning alcoholic, but it's normalized that it's okay.
Yeah. So he voiced that, and that was very important to me. That was very important at 90 something for him to voice that his father did not raise him. I was like, you would have thought that the default would be my father raised me, but here he was raised as a stepchild in the home of his aunt. The aunt had 6 children of her own. So when she added my father and his siblings, there were 9, that she raised as boys, and some girls, but most of them were boys. So
That's very powerful. So I understand you learned directly from your father on what it is to be a man and a father.
oh yes, my dad was a very present father. He worked very hard. I mean, I know the modus of my father's work. First as a printer, early morning is gone, but weekends he's home with us and does things with us. I remember very early as a 4-year-old going for a picnic alone with my dad. My dad took me, we were living in Ghana at the time. He took me to a dam, but it had a resort. So it's called the Akosombo Dam in Ghana. And we still have pictures from that trip where it was just him and myself, And I remember another occasion where he took me with him. We went for a camp, like a camp meeting where people like in Nigeria now, I think we have like 1 week long camps, Christian camps. So I was young, but he took me with him. My mom and the other younger ones could not come. So that is some of my experience with my dad.
So growing up, would you say who carry most of the emotional weight within your family, your mom or your dad?
I would say to a large extent they shared it. They were both very actively engaged in our upbringing. My own personal experience, which I'm now finding out in therapy, is that my mom's initial absence in the very first few years of my life, my mom was sick. When I was born, my mom was very sick and I was not breastfed. I was given to a nanny and taken to another place because she was very sick. And I discovered that had repercussions on my adaptation, attachment, detachment issues for me, where I discovered that I have abandonment sensations. But it was not until I was 4 years old that I recognized her as my mom. I like, this woman must be my mother because, I've been passed from hand to hand. So finally, I was able to recognize her. So I would say to your question, though, beyond that point, they both were compensating for whatever the deficits that I may have had as a young child growing up. When it comes to discipline, I remember that the last time my mom disciplined me with a cane, I was 13 years old. To show her displeasure, she told me to fix my room. And as a 13-year-old, it went in one ear and came out the other. When she came and saw how untidy my room was, she gave me a good whooping, you know. And my dad, I was 17 when I got my last whooping with him.
Wow.
Because they were hands-on. They were not abusive, but they will talk to you. And if you are, adamant on having your way, they will show who is in charge. I went to a party and my dad told me to be back by 10. So I stayed past midnight. So 1 a.m., I was not back. It was in the neighborhood. So my dad came to the place and told some of my friends outside to get my attention. So they tapped my shoulder and pointed to the door. And I saw my father. So I just came out and he was going in front. I was following him.
No question asked.
No questions. When we got, he said, "What are you doing outside at this time?" But I told him, "Is this the time you said?" He just gave me, bam, 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 bam. You just take it.
And it's a normal thing back in different part of Africa anyway. There has to be consequence for behavior, which is very important in raising children, because if you don't, they grow up to be older person. They won't think there's any consequence. They will dismiss anything. And that's when the wrong choices comes in. And the society is not going to take it easy on them
No.
without them not having consequence.
No. His discipline, using a cane was not out of proportion. He was not mad. He didn't wound. I don't remember my dad beating us to wounding or angry. He just wanted you to know that this is what you did and this is my own way of showing my displeasure, so that you can know, like you said, there's a consequence to your action.
So looking back now as a father yourself, what part of your upbringing helps you and what part have you unlearned?
Well, I would say that the fact that my father was consistent, he was consistent in his spirituality, and I saw my father grow. I watched my father grow. I watched my father reject some things. His cousins would bring alcohol to the house, and my dad would say, "No, you are not drinking it here. You can sit down in the front of the house and drink. We don't drink here." And they will make fun of him, but he will bring his Fanta or whatever and put it and insist that that's what he's drinking. So I saw my dad make such decisions. Every child experiments on their own. I experimented as a kid with alcohol, but I discovered there was nothing to it. When I discovered that, I think what happened to me, I was 11 or 12 when somebody was having a naming ceremony in our house. We're in a rented, face me, I face you back then. And they had palm wine and it was available, plentiful. So I was going there, I would drink, Then I was knocked out. So we had a table tennis. I slept for hours under that table tennis. And something happened to me, So I experimented inadvertently or purposefully, whatever, But I learned a lot from my dad. And then when it comes to what I want to unlearn, I would say that the use of the cane, I discovered that talking with my sons was a better option. My sons were tough.
Of course, boys.
They were tough, but with a lot of talking. It's not as if we didn't use the appropriate. My wife had a slippers. She called it Mr. Do Right. So when she brings it out, Mr. Do Right will talk to the seat of your wisdom. We used it appropriately, and but we had a lot of talk. And I think till today, my children can talk to me about anything. They are all grown, they have their own families. There's nothing they cannot call me about. Or if they are sad, if they are happy, if they're excited. And that is what we want. We don't want a situation where we wound the emotions of the child to the point where the child would rather have you, it's like me and I as arm's length. You do your thing, I'll honor you from afar, So that is not the case with us. We used appropriate when they were little, but when they grew up, it was the talking part of it that was very difficult. Very difficult. With talking meaning you talk until you're blue in the face, but they still want to do. They will still do, but they will know that they can always come back to you.
Yeah.
I remember one of my sons, eldest son, he's going to be 38 this year. He was in college, but he was 16. He went to college early here in the States.
Okay.
And he made some very tough decisions. He called us one day and said, "Dad, are you with mom?" I said, "Yeah, I'm with mom." I said, "What's up?" I said, "I just wanted to let you know." And my heart was like, okay, maybe he wants to tell me he's now going to be a pastor because the school he was going to had a pastoral program. He was studying marketing. He said, "I just wanted to let you know I pierced my ears." I said, "You what?" I said, "Yeah, I just wanted to let you know I pierced my ears. I have earrings now." I said, "Okay. So where did you have it done?" He said, "At Walmart. They had, like where they sell jewelry." I said, "I hope it was done with sterile." He said, "Yes." My wife was looking at me like,
You didn't blow up.
the guy is 3,000 miles away.
What can you do?
There's nothing. But he got it from external people because he had aunties and who lived in Atlanta, and he would go to visit them. They said, "What is this you have in your ear? You cannot come to this house with that thing. Take it off." They showed him pepper. So the community dealt with him. I mean, we had so many different things like that where we just had to walk gingerly around these things so that we don't cause permanent damage in a temporary situation.
And not only that, for them to not seek advice and help from somebody else that will misdirect them into the wrong direction, which most of the time, many African parents do not understand that. They feel like, which is what I'm going to talk about later on, discipline and being harsh and distancing yourself is what is going to create fear in these children. And when you create fear, that will actually put them in shape. But in this society, whether we're talking about here, abroad, or back home in different part of Africa, where there's social media, there's connection within 24 hours, they could get any advice from anywhere. So we have to be careful on that. So it's part of what I want to actually dig into later on. So in African family system, we're talking about the strength and the limitation. African family system are often praised for community, respect, continuity. But like you said, with your son, that community of, even though you are here, they don't live within your community, but they're able to from different states and say, what is it that you're doing? But some people don't even have that. But I'm talking about back home now, but there's limitation that really spoke about openly. What do you see as a strength of African family structure?
I would say that the fact that as parents, as we value our children, we value the fact that we can bear children. And sometimes that is where we go overboard. We feel a sense of protectionism. We want to protect them. We want to make sure that they don't shame us. Unfortunately, it is shame-based, fear and shame-based setup. And the desire to protect the children from things that we think will harm them can now make us overdo some things. So I would say that the positive is the fact that we want to protect, particularly mothers. Mothers are more attuned to protection. Fathers are more attuned to provision. Work hard, provide to make sure that the children are able to have what they need to be able to stand on their own business, either you're doing business or you're working for the government or whatever way. So I would say protection and provision are critical factors that African parents show up with. when it comes to making sure that their children are able to stand on their own. And then the value system. There is a value system that is prevalent. Some may be hypocritical. You may be telling them something else and doing something else, but there is a value system of respect, of honor, of humility, all those things, those values are present. And when there's congruence between the values and the practice of it, the children get the most out of it. But when it is hypocritical, it harms the children on the long run. They'll just be like turning their nose to them like, well, I know what you are doing. I know what you are saying. So those values are supposed to be like guardrails that are supposed to protect the children. And that's what we either pass it on through the church system or the community family system. So I would say that is what we bring to the table and not value less or value neutral. We are very moral, but doesn't mean that there's no corruption either. So that's why I talk about the hypocrisy of it.
And then you also mentioned it a little bit, if you can expand on it, when it comes to family and parenting, what are the things that we struggle with mostly?
Parenting, I think the gap in parenting is that we are not up to date with our times. Our youngest child is 22. And for a long time, I was using the lenses of how I raised his brothers to raise him. His brothers, the one next to him is 34. That is, so there is like a 12-year gap. And then the next one is 30, will be 36, then 38. So I was using the same methodology that I used with the older ones with him. And it was not working because I forgot that he is a Gen Z and they are millennials. So being up to date is very important and not insisting that the same template that I used for the last set will work with this set. And like someone said, one of my friends, Praise for speaks about the seed, knowing the type of seed that you have. So that's the second factor. This child is not the same as this child. Okay. So you cannot treat this child the same way you're treating this child. You need to know the love languages. You need to know the affect. You need to know how this child shows up. You need to know the gift sins of the child, and not rope them together.
Individualistic.
Yes, be individual approach. So this one child can be an oak, while the other one is a palm tree, while the other one is an Iroko seed. So each child needs to be treated with their values. And then, so once we decided that that's what, he told us what he wanted to do, and we were wondering, is that what you're going to do for school? He said, yes. Do you know this child enrolled himself in Purdue University without our help, independent, chose his own course. But when it came to money, we have to pay. We have to pay. And then we turned him on to the loan line. Like, this is the student loan line, but you too, you have to be responsible because if we pay and you don't go, our money will be wasted. So when you have skin in the game,
you understand.
you will be committed. So what I'm saying is that the gap of wanting to use what our parents use for us on our children is not going to work when it comes to parenting. We need to be able to customize to each child and to each season of life.
And in our society too, we understand the sense of respect for the elders. And sometimes that respect tends to turn into silence or fear for the children, which a lot of time actually debar the children, especially in this society that we are, that actually allows individualistic thinking. Self-expression is very, very important. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. We come from a culture where parents literally want to choose what their child will do in college because it will make you look good and then it gives you your own social security for the future. If my son is a physician, that means that I'm set for life, if my daughter is, whatever. But we discovered that it's always good to let the child own their own future and own their own decisions and not begin to make choices and decisions for them, especially when it comes to their career choice. Guide them, but let the final decision be theirs to make. And another thing where I'm also discovering is that when children, especially as they're becoming older, you need to change your tactic so that you can become colleagues. Sometimes we do not know, we do not remember or take to account that even children need respect.
Yes.
I have a commanding presence with my children. And sometimes when we're talking on our group chat, I don't know when I command. So my second son, Ife, will say, Dad, which means, Dad, check yourself. He won't say it disrespectfully. I can say, Ife, meet me over at this place. Or say, Dad. It's like, you didn't even ask me. You're just telling me. I'm married. I have my own children. I have a wife. I have my responsibilities. You can't just be commanding me. Unfortunately, some of us never get out of that mode. So we need to be aware that our children are now, we are their parents, but we are colleagues. We dialogue. We find a sweet spot that works for both parties, and not feel that we can demand things from them. So there's age appropriate respect for every stage of life.
And it's so true what you just said, because we don't realize there's a point where authority needs to stop and start becoming emotional distance with our children. And many people don't realize that, that authority create distance with our children because they feel like this parents is just going to tell me what to do, what not to do. And they don't learn to listen. Even the way you listen is very important. I've said it on this podcast before. I remember my son he said, they call me Yami. Yami, I want to talk to you. I said, what do you all want to say? He looked at my body language. He said, forget it. I said, what do you mean forget it? I said, I'm standing here. You're telling me to forget it. He said, your body language shows me you already make up your mind. And whatever I say is not going to go. So I had to then adjust myself in a way that
Present.
my presence is very important, and to show emotion that I'm here to listen, not to give judgment. And I'm here, only if you ask for my advice that I'll give
Exactly.
you advice. But it's so difficult for so many of us to do sometimes.
Yeah, it's because we never stopped, we never stopped to think that our children are growing. And it's also a reflection of our own relationship with the people above us. I had to checkmate my dad a few times. My dad is a very kind and nice person, but sometimes he forgets that autonomy, because authority and autonomy, they need to be, you have to walk through it. Our children have their autonomy, and we may think we have authority, but we need to walk it gingerly. My son, the same Ife. Ife is our very encourager child. He really helped us to grow.
That's why his name is Ife, and he brought that.
So Ife braided his hair
Hmm.
and went to church when he was about 18 or thereabout. He wore a suit and he braided his hair. So my mom heard about it and called my wife. My wife gave me the phone. Your mom is on the phone. I think she probably said, hold on. Hold on for pastor. Hold on for pastor. So she gave me the phone. I said, hello. Is it true that your son did his hair to church? I said, so? Are you not a pastor? I said, yeah, I'm a pastor. So I said, did he not go to church? Hey, he went to church, but why would he do this? I said, Mom, the issues I have with this child is more than hair. If he has his hair on his head and he took that head to church, leave the boy alone. Then she gave the phone to my dad. So you see, so that my dad can lay down the law. And my dad got on the phone and was trying to insist that I need to correct myself. I said, Dad, you raised me. It's time for me to raise my own children. And I'm doing the best I can with the circumstances I have. So please let me raise my own children. Say, am I the one? I said, Dad, if you don't get off this subject, I'm going to hang up this phone. And he didn't. And I hung up. So I set a boundary. It was a hard boundary that we're not having this conversation. You're not going to be telling me what to do in my own primary family. If you've not trained me well at 45 or whatever my age was at that time, then it's too late. So I think those self-awareness, when you said you checked yourself and your son gave you a signal, Mom, you're not listening to me. And you had to do self-awareness and said, okay, son, I'm sorry. What do you want to say? And he knows that you're engaged. On another occasion, my dad, 10 years after that, okay, fast forward 10 years after that incident, our youngest son was he didn't braid his hair. He did locks, So he had locks. Just his hair was all over the place. And we're here in the States. We're greeting my dad and mom. And my dad looked at him and said, "What is that you have on your head?" Is that you?" And he went on and on about. So I said, so the boy looked at me and I took the phone. I said, "Dad, the boy wants to greet you. If you don't want to greet him, then please, you can stop. But this one that you're doing is not acceptable." And my mom now interjected, said, he calls my dad D. D, that's all she said. And my dad changed immediately. It's like, "Oh, Enoch, you're a good boy. I like you." It was self-awareness. Like,
Awareness, yeah.
Hey, I can change. Any of us can change. We don't have to remain in our errors if we are corrected, if it's brought to our attention. So that's how I look at it.
And it's so important what all these things that you explain, because there's so much when you told your dad, his here is not what you're worried about. Because your dad may not understand the society where you are raising them. That is the least of your worry. They're going to school. They're doing so many things. They are not the children that you have to pick up on the street, or they get into trouble with law enforcement and all that stuff. You don't have to go through that. So ordinary here, and it's because it's a different environment. They are back home. We're here, and they may not even understand how it is here. And there's so many other African parents who are raising their children, whereby ordinary these things that you mentioned, it becomes bothersome for them, without understanding that these kids are battling so many other things outside too.
A lot
That we're not even exposed to when we were growing up.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, the hair was the least of my problems.
Your worry.
Totally.
It brings me to religious influences. Christianity, I know you're very good as a Christian, but Islam may be something that I'm going to actually bring it in. Christianity
Sure.
and Islam have a profound shape of African family life, sometimes reinforcing patriarchal family settings, whereby it stands as a moral grounding. How do you think Christianity and Islam positively shape African family values?
I would say Christianity, let's take Christianity, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long. That's a command. So most children, or as a child, we have a rope that connects us to our parents that way. That is a command from God. So even if my father is misbehaving or doesn't, toe the line, out of my respect for God, I'll still take care of him. I may not have a close relationship with him, but I will not let him be, languish. We have many children like that who are held by the cord of their responsibility to God, in taking care of their parents, And I would say that in Christianity, again, it says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. That's a law that comes after honor your father and your mother, which means that the fact that a parent is to be honored means that the parent has a responsibility of providing an environment where there's no provocation.
Yes.
So for me, that is the balance. And I think if a child knows that there's a reciprocal exchange of positive, interaction, then the child will continue to be responsible to provide the support the parent needs. And a parent also responsible to provide the support that the child needs at any stage of life. So I'm more familiar with the Christian philosophy. I mean, my father's sister is a Muslim, so I have a little bit of Islam in the family. I mean, like Yorubas, we usually will have a mixed bag of. So you go and eat Ileya here, and then you go to Christmas with them, all that, So I think those values are very strong as religious, moral grounding that helps us to at least mitigate all the negative forces that could have been running rampant. Without them, I think we would have run ourselves aground with, evil forces.
And that's so true. Nothing is perfect. And sometimes, do you think religion unintentionally reinforce unhealthy power dynamics within family?
I think so. I think so. Especially when people misread. I was talking to someone earlier today, and we were reading a passage from the book of Ephesians in the Bible, where it says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands
Mm-hmm.
as unto the Lord." Fortunately, in patriarchal societies, that's the only part they will read. They will not go to the one before it and the one after it. The one before it says, submitting to each other, to one another in the fear of God. The one before that one, verse 20, says, giving thanks for everything. So I appreciate you with thanks. You appreciate me with thanks. But if, as a man, I zero in on wives, submit, and I'm demanding submission without appreciating what you've done, without appreciating your person, without valuing you, you find it hard to submit. Whereas the verse that follows wives submit says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Jesus died for the church. Husband, love you. But the patriarchal system of dominance wants to stay with wives, submit, wives, submit. Whereas the man is supposed to do more by sacrificial love. So love begat submission. That is what is called the energizing cycle. When a man loves his wife, she submits because she's like, this guy's got me. But when the man doesn't love the wife, she finds it hard to submit because it's like, what am I submitting to? You are not caring for me. You don't, So those are the dynamics that I think, at least from my own Christian perspective, religion can perpetuate some negative stereotypes. The
And
Bible is very balanced.
Even that, sorry to cut in, that word submit itself is very powerful. It's what is being used in those kind of male-dominated society a lot. And that actually have a repercussion in marriage life, in, emotional absence of many men, and create authoritarian parenting as well.
Yeah, it does. I totally agree with you. And it is because it is misread. Okay. It is misread. And when it is misread, that is when you misapply something, abuse is inevitable. When a purpose of a thing is not understood, abuse is inevitable. That is not the purpose of that passage in the Bible. Another one that is very interesting, just for context, is in the book of Peter, 1 Peter, for those who are Christians. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1 to 6 talks about the wife's submission. Sarah submitted to Abraham, and then, he called her Lord. A man can read that and say, hey, you see what? But verse 7 says, you men, deal with your wives according to knowledge and understanding. Understand your wife and honor your wife. Second, then 3, deal with your wife as a delicate person, and then deal with her as a partner in salvation, or else your prayers will not be answered. If you don't do these things, you are wasting time praying. So I tell men, I said, this is your assignment, to find a way to understand this woman. And she's hard-headed. Understand why she's hard-headed. And she'd understand. That's all your job. Your job is to study her as a book until you get a master's and PhD in your wife. That's your command. When you do that, her submission is a piece of cake. Understand her, honor her, that is, cherish her, and then treat her as a delicate person. Don't misuse her emotionally or physically. And then treat her as though both of you are going to God's kingdom. Okay? For Muslims, I know it's called Al-Jannah, but treat her as though you are going to be saved together so that your prayers will not be hindered. So I say that to men, that many of us, our prayers as men are hindered. They are not going anywhere because of the way we are treating our wives.
And the impact. And that brought me to motherhood, fatherhood, and cultural accountability. In many Nigerian culture, motherhood is dignified role, while fatherhood is shielded from accountability. Growing up in Yoruba value system, I know you must have heard it. Ọmọ tó bá dání ti bàbá, èyí tí ò bá dára tìyá ẹ̀ ni. meaning a good child belongs to the father and the child who is wayward belongs to the mother. How does this proverb shape the responsibilities and the blame in parenting?
It is a misappropriated proverb, is a misappropriated proverb because the child belongs to both parents equally, and both parents have equal responsibility in how a child turns out. Both. My wife and I have been married now. This year 2026, we make it 39 years. And I've discovered that the responsibility of how my family runs is first and foremost on my head as the father. So I cannot blame my wife if any child turns out bad, because God in the Bible Christian dynamics holds men accountable. When Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, I always ask the men, who ate the fruit? They said Eve. But who did God come to ask when he came? It's Adam. Adam, where are you? Adam will say, Oga, come with me now. I'm not the one who did this thing. It is this woman. So he asked her first. So no, that proverb is not good for accountability, because it's putting the weight of raising the child and making sure the child turns out right on the woman who is running around trying to make sure the children eat properly, or unfortunately, men, like you said, are absent. They take a back row seat. They say because they are providing, not knowing that the provision, the word for provision, includes emotional presence. Emotional, provide for the children emotionally, provide for them spiritually, provide for them physically. Children need spiritual guardrails. They need moral guardrails. And the father's role in that cannot be underestimated or overestimated, whichever one you want to put it. So it is not correct to say that a child that is bad, it belongs to the mother, and a child that is good belongs to the father. No, they are both responsible for the outcome of the child. In the Bible, it says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it, which means shape the child, provide for the child the tools they need in their areas of gifting so that the child can turn out best. So if you are not providing for the child and you are wondering why the child did not turn out well, so that's my best approach.
Approach to that, because a lot of time in our society, I remember having a forum where is African parents. We all gather together and talk about the challenges that we face raising our children and how our parents raise us too. Most of the people, all of us talking, actually connect more to our mothers who are also responsible for raising us, even though the father may be there. With also talking about a family structure where is a polygamous family environment. There's children who grew up. I grew up in a polygamous environment whereby, each mother has to be the one taking that responsibility for their own children. And there's situation whereby, apart from the mother caring for the children, even the children end up caring for their siblings.
True.
And this is a common, family structure. We have to be truthful to ourselves in Nigeria and in many parts of African countries.
I think it's permissiveness. We permitted it. Unfortunately, it is not only Islam that has the caveat that says if you can care for 4, you can marry 4. Those who are not even Muslims are marrying more. So this is not under the umbrella of Islam. So for me, it is a man who does not know that one woman is enough work. One woman, to be able to understand one woman and treat her well and present her back to God and say, this is the woman you gave me. What would you say when you have 4 or 5 and you're not able to take care of them emotionally? You're not able to take care of them physically, and they are fending for themselves because they have children by you. So I think for me, I think it is a sign of self-control, self-control. I would say that it is lack of self-discipline, because usually it's because the man wants more sex and he thinks one woman cannot provide, as and when he needs it. The truth about it is that with sex comes children, and with children comes responsibility. Unfortunately, when the children come in some of our African situations, we now begin to distribute them. go to your brother somewhere, or go to your uncle. I'm sending you this child. And the people didn't send you to go and have those children because you can't afford to take care of them. We understand that there was a time during the agrarian period where children were to help with the workers. That's a different time. So I would say for me, my understanding is be satisfied with the wife that you have. If you're not able to have sexual intimacy with her because of whatever reason, that's self-control. You wait. And when she's ready and able, you continue. So that is this. I've never had to talk about this before, but talking about it is quite an interesting
It's
dynamic.
interesting because, I bring this up because some men also lack emotional connection and they are emotionally delicate, whereby they feel like, let me move somewhere else. If I'm too connected with this, I cannot deal with this. Need, to move from one woman to the other to continue to boost my ego. And whereby they blame everything. Oh, it's part of our culture. It's okay to have as many wives as possible. It's okay to have as many children as possible without having that emotional connection to those children and those women. Because it's so much of how much one human being could do, how much you could divide your emotion, how much you could divide your concentration on a child or a family or your wife. And like you said, these children are distributed all over the places and tell you go and live with your auntie so. You go and live with your uncle so. Whereby they are not the one responsible for those children. And until when we as a society put our foot down, that you have those children, you take care of them.
Yep.
And it is so sad. I mean, and I understand what you're saying because it's not something that you talk about all the time. So how can, looking at our society, that if a man shows emotion too much, he could be shamed. How can African father reclaim responsibility without feeling culturally, attacked?
Okay, so we're talking about expressing emotion
Yes.
and connecting with your children or your
children,
family, your primary family.
Yes.
I think we need to give permission. This forum can be a place to give permission to let people know that emotions not expressed cause havoc in the body. Okay. Because the body is listening. I'm reading a book by Daniel Amen. He says, your brain is listening. When you have an emotional situation that you don't channel appropriately, it causes other psychological problems in you. So it's like bottled up anger or bottled up grief or bottled up. It's not bottled up. They are in some muscles, either the muscle of the heart or the muscle of, different places in the body. Okay. Or in the brain, the amygdala or the cerebrum or the different places in the brain, frontal cortex, all these places house those unexpressed emotions. So I'm saying this to men who feel that they need to bottle up their emotions. It's not bottled up. It is in those places and it will cause illness, either emotional illness because you're always angry because you never dealt with your emotions, or you are always, like you said, this person is now looking for someone to go and have sex with, to express themselves, rather than staying with the wife that they married so that they can walk it through and deal with it together. They'll go and, take it to somebody else. And then it just continued to snowball. So I would say there is permission to be expressive. There's permission to talk to your own wife. There's permission to talk to your own children. There's permission to be present, fully present, because vulnerability breeds trust. If you are vulnerable and people say, this thing pain daddy like this, pain me well. I'm so sad. I'm sorry, sir. They can connect with you better. But when you act as if you are Superman, like everybody's like, okay, he can take it. So that's how we regulate so that we don't hurt ourselves, as men, particularly African men.
That lack of emotional expression could also come when it's not expressed the way it should be expressed in a healthy way. It could come out in anger.
Outbursts. Yeah. Or even drinking. Some people drink themselves to douse their emotions. Because if you are tipsy, then you are not really thinking about what you are dealing with until the drink wears off, and then you are back to where you were, and then you have to drink more. So that's what leads to alcoholism. People drinking to, medicate their emotions. Yeah.
Of medication.
Yeah, medication.
So on your platform, you center on family excellence, yet many men were never taught they were responsible for especially focusing on emotional presence, which we already talked about. How can we define family excellence in African context?
That is it's a very hard question, because I don't want anybody to think that I have a perfect family, because I don't. Perfection is relative. What I have is a family that works, works in the sense that our children are grown. Just the other day, our youngest son called us with a concern. He said, Mom expressed that she wanted to know what I'm going to do after August. He's in school in another state, Indiana. And my plans are fluid, and I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm thinking of moving to another state. She wanted to know if I'm coming home, but I don't think, coming home is part of the plan. And we told him flat out, hey, son, nobody is expecting you to come home. If you come home, fine. If you don't, fine. As long as you're able to pay your own bills and take care of yourself, we're cool. So I have come to terms with the fact that, look, everybody is growing. Where I was as a 30-year-old father when I had just 2 kids, it's not where I'm at now. I'll be 65 this year. I've grown.
Yeah.
Yeah. My younger version of me is not my current version of me. So everybody is on a continuum, and you can grow. What you don't know, you can go and learn. So that's what I keep telling people. The family excellence is in lifelong learning. That's what family excellence is. Am I willing to learn from my children? Because that's what I learned from my children. You hurt my feeling. How did I hurt your feeling? Because of what you said or what you did. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even realize it. When we sent our son off to boarding school, and he came home, and then we shoot him back because we were trying to be responsible. The boy felt so hurt. He was telling us much later in life that, what kind of thing is that? Why would you throw me out of the house because I came home unannounced? I just was missing home. I said, I won't do that today. Back then, that was all I knew. I believed I was being firm. So willingness to grow and unlearn some things is what makes for excellence. Because you see, children are resilient. If they see truthfully that the parent is changing, they can forgive the past.
You're right about that. And sometimes there's some of the parents who believe that, how am I going to change to the Western notion of family functioning? Or should I follow the Western path? This is what we do in Africa. This is part of our culture. Western culture is Western culture. What would you tell those kind of parents?
I would say humility demands that we learn new things. There's a portion in the Bible that I read recently. It said, do not say, I miss the good old days, because it is not wise. It's in the book of Proverbs. And I read it and I was like, this is interesting. Because we are all used to the good old days. The good old days. Oh, the way we used to do it. No, the good old days are gone. Learn from the present. Be a student of the present. What does the present present to you that you can gain from? Leave the good old days. Let them be in their bygones. If there are values in it that you can pull for today, Western culture. It's not everything about Western culture that is bad. There's civility. Civility is, I don't like you, but I will be polite.
Yeah.
I don't have to be aggressive with everybody to show how tough I am. No. So there are some things. Driving. Can you imagine? When you're driving, you get to a stop sign. You stop. Even if there's no car coming, you stop. And then the next person comes, they stop. Imagine when 3 of you get there at the same time. Somebody will beckon, nod to the other person like, okay, you go first. So there's nothing bad about some civility. I know. So things that we can learn and we can improve upon. Then if you go back to your country and you start driving aggressively, but you are coming from a place that was civil.
Yeah.
What's good about your aggressive driving that is not allowing people to go, and four of you meet in the middle of the road and you're horny? That is insanity.
In many African cultures, women are often taught from a very young age to practice patience, restraint, emotional self-control as a way to preserve family harmony, while men were encouraged to express themselves more openly. When patience is consistently expected from women, but men are not equally held accountable for their action, what impact can this have on emotional, physical, and psychological well-being of women and children in such belief system?
It's just unfortunate because imagine that belief system is transferred here. Okay, back in Nigeria, maybe the woman will just continue to endure because for the children or for the optics, okay? Optics meaning what will people say? She'll continue to endure the abuse, emotional abuse of a man who is just coming at her and she is taught to be patient. But here, she will switch up and switch out. It's like, hey, oh boy, your time is up. It's either you get out or I get out. So it is an unfortunate methodology that has been passed on. Like mothers will tell their children, "Ile ọkọ, ilé ẹ̀kọ́ ni o,
Yeah,
wàá forítì ni o."
yeah,
We need to retrain. We need to retrain both parties.
yeah.
Look, express yourself. Conflict resolution, which is one of the things we teach. We have an academy, we have a family life academy, which was mentioned in my introduction, where we teach people conflict resolution. Conflict resolution and communication says both of us need to talk. I need to let you know what's on my mind. You hear me out, and you can tell me what's on your mind. I'm not the only one who needs to bottle up and suck it up all the time as a woman. It's not fair. So many women just check out. When they get to the West, they just check out like, look, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this nonsense with you. So
So if you could speak directly to African fathers in the diaspora who wants to do better or feel stuck in the old pattern, what would you say to them in closing? And then,
I would say, bro, listen up. The old methods do not work. We live in an egalitarian society. Egalitarian means everybody has equal rights. Okay. If you're a Christian and you are doing that, you are out of line. Christianity does not support that. Christianity says submit to each other. If you are in doubt, go and read Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21. Okay. So I would say to men, look, let your wife have a voice. When your wife has a voice and she can express herself and you don't shut her down, then you can have a real woman, not just a toy that you play with when you want to play. And then you can be a real man because you can have rich dialogue that produces good results. That's what I have. My wife is sanguine. When you talk about sanguine, you're talking about a mover and shaker. I'm phlegmatic, okay? So when we get into it, we have robust conversation. It used to be tough, but now everybody stands their own ground. So that is how it will work in the West. If you've got away with it in Africa, I think if you want to survive, if you want to live long and not die of high blood pressure and diabetes and all the other things, because what happens is when you are stressed, your body secretes cortisol and excess adrenaline and so many things in excess. And the body doesn't know what to do with it. There's flight and fight mode going on in the body all the time. And it begins to cause problems in the physiology. And then it turns to illness. And you say, I don't know how I got sick. It was gradual. So, bro, take care of your wife and don't stress her out.
yes,
That's
thank
what
you
I'll say.
so much. You have to come back. You have to come back. I have to schedule you again. Dr. Israel Bamidele Olaore, I want to thank you. I sincerely want to thank you for joining us today and for the wisdom you share. This is not just a conversation about parenting, but about culture, healing, accountability, and growth. Your reflections reminded us that African fatherhood is not fixed. It can evolve, mature, and become more emotionally present without losing its strength. Thank you for your honesty, your compassion, and for challenges fathers in the diaspora to do better for themselves, their partners, and their children. This conversation reminds us that culture should guide us, not trap us. African fatherhood does not need to be rooted in fears to be strong. Discipline doesn't have to mean emotional distance. Respect doesn't have to come from the cost of connection. Family excellence begins when fathers are willing to reflect, unlearn, and show up, not just as provider, but as emotionally present parents. If this conversation resonates with you, please share it with your family, friends, community group. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review to help this podcast reach more listeners. Your support allow us to bring more conversation like this that are grounded in community empowerment. Until next time, stay connected, stay informed, and take care of yourself.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Pansa Pansa Live Podcast. We hope to have you back with us in the next episode as we continue to explore the nuances of the African immigrant experience. If you'd like to connect with us, you can email us at talk@pansapansa.org. That is TALK at PANSA.org. And follow us on Instagram at pansa.pansaforum. Until next time, remember to spread kindness and love. Thank you and take care of yourself.